Hi, and welcome to Mindfulness, the channel where we attempt to open up a conversation about mental health in India. Today, I'm joined by Shagun Suri, a counseling psychologist with 6 to 7 years of experience working in various setups like schools and corporate setups. Thank you for joining us today, Doctor.
Thank you, Ananya, for having me here.
Thank you. Doctor, I was told that your specialty is OCD, anxiety, and depression, right? So, can you explain those to us, please?
Okay. So when I talk of anxiety, anxiety is something all of us already have. It's an emotion. It only becomes a disorder when anxiety kind of troubles us or our functioning or creates any sort of disruption in our life in any way. That is when it becomes a disorder, right? And if you ask of depression, a lot of times people confuse depression with sad mood or a depressive state of mind.
Yeah.
You must have seen people who are just using layman people using this term as if somebody's upset, somebody's sad, or somebody's not
Right.
up to his routine, people just start saying that maybe he has
Right.
depression.
Yeah.
Depression is actually a mood disorder, and for minimum 2 weeks, we say if there are certain symptoms persisting, that is when it is categorized as depression. And usually people confuse it with a low mood or sad mood or depressive episodes.
Yeah.
And OCD is a branched anxiety disorder only. The only thing is that the discomfort of anxiety as an emotion in OCD is a notch higher. And what happens in OCD is, like, if you again ask a layman that how do you identify a person with OCD, he would just say that the person cleans a lot. Well, that's not true. What happens, the basic mechanism behind OCD is that one particular thing gets stuck in a person's mind, and that thought becomes so intrusive, repetitive, and is sometimes so negative that creates a lot of anxiety. And to get rid of that anxiety, the person gets up and wants to act on that particular thought.
Yeah.
So the thought that comes to a person's mind, which is repetitive and intrusive, is called an obsession. Because of the obsession, the person feels extremely anxious or experiences some other emotion in form of guilt, can be anger and shame. And what the action that we take on those emotions, which is like a compelled behavior. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but till the time you
Right.
do it, you don't feel comfortable. So that's the second part, which is called the compulsion, right?
Right.
So OCD is an anxiety disorder only, and it can exist in different forms of obsession. There are people who do not perform compulsions but go through only obsessions as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
So just giving you like a brief idea about anxiety, OCD, and depression. Rest, whatever questions you have, I'll be happy to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you think that this lockdown has affected people suffering from these disorders?
So see, the lockdown has, when I spoke to a couple of people during this lockdown, definitely I feel that it isn't the lockdown really which has impacted people, but the uncertainties that have come along with it. Like every time a person is stepping out, or when the lockdown just
Right.
happened, they were really worried that how are we going to function, and how is this going to be, anything going to be possible.
Yeah.
So it's mainly the fear and the uncertainties which came around the lockdown, which gave people a lot of anxiety. So for people who already had anxiety issues or who were already on the edge, it was harder for them. And but then over a period of time, what I think, it's been 9 months, 9 to 10 months since we are under the lockdown. So I have seen people who have a kind of developed and experienced severe level of anxiety in these past couple of months. Because what happened in the beginning was people will still outrightly talking about it, like whatever their fear was, they were venting it out to each other or to a specialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened over a period of time, that thing kind of took a back seat, and how to move forward, how to make ends meet, came to their conscious mind. So when that happened and they stopped talking about the lockdown, I feel that that is somewhere which was stored in their subconscious, which was already, which is always running in people's mind every time they're doing anything or stepping out, because they know that
Yeah.
there is a lockdown and they have to figure out a way to make ends meet. So that
Yeah.
is when I feel the anxiety issues kind of increased. People have been dealing with it in a very strong way. I feel everyone after the lockdown will come out to be wiser and stronger in some or the other way. Also, the lockdown changed a lot of circumstances for people. For people who, like there were couples who were all the time out and busy with their lives, and when they came back to each other in the evening, they always had things to talk about.
Right.
So it created a lot of anxiety between them because they were just locked down inside the house with each other. So
Yeah.
that was kind of
Yeah.
creating trouble and problems for them. Similarly, there were students, there were people who were staying away from families, then they decided to stay with their families. There were a lot of adjustment issues, a lot of
Right.
accommodation issues. So I think it has impacted people, like it has given anxiety to a lot of people, but also over a period of time I feel that the more you expose yourself to a situation, you also become very resistant towards it. So
Yeah.
I think have been very strong in these couple of months. And I have seen people who, in the beginning of lockdown, were extremely anxious and they fought through it, and now they're doing much better.
Right. Okay. So that's good. That provides people with some hope. Yeah. So, doctor, mental health is still such a taboo subject in India. Like, people don't talk about it much. But as you said, anxiety disorders and the like are being elevated during lockdown. So, how can we start to help people going through that when people are not willing to talk about it in the first place?
The first thing is, as like I said, that it's very important for us to identify the things that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Communication is extremely important. Any sort of thing, any issue in mental health kind of increases or surfaces more if it's not talked about for a very long time. Like anxiety to a
Yeah.
disorder level doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time for that thing to build up, right? So firstly, there are certain early signs we all can look out for in form of, say, cognitive, behavioral, and somatic symptoms. Cognitive
Right.
symptoms are something which are hard for other people to identify because it's inside a person's mind, like overthinking, overanalyzing, creating a loop of thoughts in a person's mind. That
Yeah.
is something third person or some other person, it's hard to identify. But we can definitely identify behavioral symptoms, which means if you see that the person gets extremely behaviorally restless, like he's constantly
Right.
moving back and forth, very fidgety, he's very irritable, he's very restless. Now, these are the behavioral symptoms which we can watch out for. And next are the somatic symptoms. When I say somatic symptoms, means anxiety also has say ways of making a person physically uncomfortable. So
Hmm.
the physical discomfort that a person goes through from head to toe, there are a lot of physical symptoms that a person can have who's suffering from
Yeah.
anxiety, starting from headache to palpitations to shivering to dry of mouth, to feeling breathless, to feeling stiffness in muscles. Now, these are the things which a person would complain. Of course, now if I'm complaining of perpetual discomfort, the first thing that my family members are going to do is take me to a general physician for a
Right.
proper checkup. Once my GP tells me that, no, I think it's just that you're taking a lot of stress. Now, any stress which is making you physically uncomfortable are early signs of anxiety. So
Right.
you should watch out for that. Secondly, like I said, you can watch out for behavioral symptoms, like a person is constantly shaking his leg, he's moving back and forth when he's talking on the phone. Now these are
Yeah.
the things which you identify as early signs. You can definitely ask a person, like create one small statement saying that, are you okay? When you say,
Yeah.
are you okay, the person extremely, he feels very comfortable that somebody has noticed something and somebody
Right.
is fall back on, I can talk to this person whenever I want.
Yeah.
However, I feel that if you see that these symptoms have become very perpetual and very repetitive, like every second day the person is going through that episode, so the best thing to do is support that person to find some professional help.
Right. Right.
So, in early signs, to make a first person feel comfortable and to support that person, you can definitely talk and communicate openly. But if that happens very frequently, then I would advise that you should help the person seek some professional advice, like maybe speak
Yeah.
to a mental health professional or a psychiatrist or a counselor. Yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you, doctor. And Dr. OCD specifically, I wanted to know how it gets impacted in any sort of stressful situation, not just lockdown. Like, does
So
it?
OCD is being an anxiety disorder where your mind is kind of tuned to get rid of any negative emotion,
Yeah.
mainly anxiety in a particular, right? So, for example, when a person who has contamination or cleanliness OCD, that person, when he or she is extremely anxious, starts to clean, starts to dust, right?
Yeah.
So that's because the mind is conditioned to get rid of anxiety in a particular way. So any XYZ triggers or say anything that a person is going through. If it's a stressful situation, if the person is extremely anxious about any other reason, the compulsions kind of increase. So you can say that in a stressful situation, the OCD increases. For people who are managing their OCD in a good way, and they're not letting their OCD control their lives, even for those people, sometimes in extremely stressful situations, the obsessions can severely strike back.
Yeah.
So that is something I always tell people who have OCD that watch out for your stressful episodes and some things, that do not go right in your life for any other reason, because anything that stresses you out, your obsessions, your compulsions are going to come back. So we need to be a little more vigilant about obsessions when they strike back in stressful situations, and handle that stress separately and not give in to the compulsions.
Yeah. All right, thank you. And I have a couple of more questions. One of them is, how do you think that this will affect the mental health of generations to come?
Are you saying the lockdown?
The entire situation, not just lockdown, but the fact that there is a pandemic, do you think that it'll lead to long-lasting any sort of disorder in the generations to come?
I really think just like it's not about the pandemic, in general, even without pandemic, mental health is something which was not talked about for a very long time.
Yeah, agreed.
Myself being in the field, I've seen this very slow, gradual change that people have started accepting, people have started talking about it, and there could be multiple reasons. The first reason is definitely, how it motivates people to talk about it. That if someone is going through and talking to a professional or looking into your mental health as you look into your physical health, has kind of helped people. So that positive thing itself has become a motivation. So if I as a person, go to a therapist and I feel that it's benefiting me, it's helping me, it's making my life better in some way, I will definitely tell 10 more people about the same thing. So word of mouth and sharing your own experiences, if you have gained some sort of benefit out of looking into your mental health that has made your life better, is definitely something. So I've seen parents actually telling their kids to start speaking to a therapist if they're stressed about anything, or not really a therapist. Even the parents have become a little open about it. So it's very important that right now, this thing, and also I think the social media also has a role to play. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but the celebs have to talk about something for people to realize it's important. That's how it always works, and it has worked here positively for sure, because the past couple of years we've seen celebrities talking about mental health, the prime minister talking about mental health, and how it is important. So it's talked about so much that now people have started accepting that each one of us might have some issues, either from the past or present, or potentially from in the coming future. So people have started talking about it. And if you ask me, people usually think that therapy and counseling is only for people who are going through some sort of stress, or who have a mental disorder, or have clinical issues. Well, I think that's not true, because I feel therapy is for right? Therapy is for everyone. Why do I say that? Because life being life, when we move forward, life will throw challenges at us, right? Therapy is also to understand yourself better as an individual, for your own personal development. We all have a past, we all have been through stresses, right? Coming out of that stress, there are certain learnings, there are certain lessons that I carry forward with me. How to make those things better, how to become better in handling and managing difficult situations in future, when life throws something at you, is something therapy can teach. So I feel therapy is for everyone. Me being a therapist, I have seen a therapist in my past, because I also had some stresses I wanted to discuss, just to get an opinion of someone who's more professionally qualified to do so, right? And a lot of times, when a person goes through something, your emotions will always override your rationality, and that is when you need a bit of support and hand holding. So being a professional myself, I also felt that it's always better to speak to someone else who can actually give me that sort of guidance. So therapy is not always curative, it's always like it is preventive as well. So that is something people really need to understand and accept.
Okay, yeah, I agree. So that's all. Thank you so much for your time, Shagun. It meant a lot. What?
Yeah. So answering your question,
Yeah.
answering your previous question, just to close it, that definitely in the coming generations, now that people have started talking about it and they have seen how talking about it can help, how looking into mental health can make our lives better. I think it's becoming better, and it's going to get even better for the coming
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
Like I said, this lockdown has taught us a lot of things as individuals as well. How to
I
handle stress, how
agree.
to build
Yeah.
that threshold, that resistance to handle difficult situations when we have no choice, but we're still doing that, right?
Right.
So each one has gone through that phase, and we are going to pass that insight, that knowledge in the coming generations as well. So hopefully it's going to get better for the coming
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.